Edison High School, opened 1910, designed for 2,000 students. Technical support to all of the booming manufacturing companies that were sprouting up in the early 1900s in North Philadelphia. By God, a stadium 14 blocks away, known as Connie Mack Stadium. Hey, not but blocks away from probably the beer capital of the world, maybe second to Germany. Garment mills, maybe the leading manufacturing clothing company, maybe second to New York and maybe second to the Carolinas, but certainly they learned how to make clothing and knit, and they learned how to make beer and drink it, and they were paid middle to high-ender wages and salaries. That school was so important in the country that very soon there were 3 famous people who visited it, not at the same time. Many don't come up with one of them. One was Babe Ruth. Oh, that's right. Right down the street. Probably walked. The second was Amelia Earhart. Whoa, that's a pretty good one too. The third one is even better and trumps the first 2. And that's Albert, fill in the blank, Albert, not the comic guy, Albert Einstein. Yeah, that's how important it was. Until 50s and 60s, when all of a sudden, the big boom in the suburbs and the Levitt towns, and the jobs then start moving to where the population was growing the most, which was in the suburbs. And the mills were shutting down, and the drugs were increasing. And in the 60s, exacerbated by 2 factors: race changes and the effing Vietnam War. It was protected on a historical society. It was never supposed to be dismantled, even 1 brick. However, there was a fire, 2012, and it burnt the historical marker. So I guess that meant that, it's not historically protected anymore because the marker's burnt down. And then a developer, quote, saved the day for a song and a dance, promised a granite memorial to the Edison 64. 64 students that went to that high school died in Vietnam, the highest total in the country. I went to the highest Catholic total. Father Judge, we lost 27, the highest Catholic total in the country. I wrote a song, Come Home Vietnam Vets. It was sung by a student from Cardinal Doherty. They lost. We tied. Like it's a sporting event. 27. Also, you add them up, it's 54. To get to Edison's total, you need to add 10 more gravestones. 64. At 7th and Lehigh, 90% of the building was transformed into something they needed. They say, a save a lot. I bet you they didn't save a lot. I bet you they saved a little. And a Burger King. But to the residents, I'd buy them and give them burgers for free for the rest of their effing life. And I'd give them the garments off my back. I go down to Kensington. It doesn't matter to me whether they're veterans, have DD-214s or they're not. I don't care if they're white. I don't care if they're female. I go to Logan Square and I go to Camden, Federal Street and train station. But back on point, I was preparing a speech for my high school when I came across a picture of the demolition site. The next day, I took a homeless man. I had just purchased 3 weeks in a downscale roadway inn in Mount Laurel. African American, one leg, homeless, living in the ice machine room, and said, "Frank, you went to Edison. They're knocking it down." And he said, "We have to stop that." I said, I hope you'd say that. We went across the Tacony Bridge, and Frank said, Bob, why are we going across a bridge? Why are we going across the river?" I said, "We're going to save your high school, Frank, from being demolished." He said, "I went to Edison High School in New Jersey." I said, "It's too effing late, Frank, to jump out now because you'd get mighty wet." He says, "I'm all in." So we headed down, past K&A, out to 7th Street, made a left, went through the bad lanes. We were stopped 3 times. I had a History Channel hat. I recently, the week before, had an audition at a movie company. Imagine that. And what I got out of it was a hat, but it had H on it. And they asked me what I wanted. "Do you want to sell drugs or buy them?" I said, "You see the H? I'm in Hades, I know, but I'm doing a documentary. Frank's in the movie. Frank, is that right?" And Frank said, "Yeah," but he also knew a couple other things. I don't know what other words he said, but we were waved through to the next 2 stops until the tribal thief stood in the middle of the street and come in. And Frank said, "I think he's going to shoot us." And I said, "I'm ready. Are you Frank?" He said, "I don't think so." And he said, "You the guys that saved my school?" I said, "That's right." He said, "God bless you." He said, "You want us to go with you?" No, thank you. So we went, and I gave a speech. And I was quite aggressive. Quite aggressive. I physically assaulted a 10-foot brand new chain link fence. How come we only have little parking 2-foot fences surrounding and protecting our capital? But a demolition site that is really ground zero, hallowed ground of the Vietnam War. You got a 10-foot site. They had, well, a couple of weeks later, they said, well, maybe somebody does give a shit about this demolition. February 18, 2020, I can testify and be a witness to 64 homeless veterans moved into 64 $250,000 condos. And some say I had something a little bit to do with it. One of my best friends, Joe Griffiths, who I've been on the show talking about Edison many times, and talking about donut dollies, and talking about blind veterans, and talking about mothers of suicide veterans. He said I might have had something to do with that. And I really have nothing to do with it. He has everything to do with every word I said. I'm not going to close, and you're going to see the clip. Recreation of the protest. I'm going to talk it through for you right now. This is my speech at the demolition site, 7th and Lehigh High School, where 64 young heroes went off to war and didn't return. Standing up, they returned 64 coffins with flags. I was so angry by what I saw that I ran the security fence, punched it and kicked it. I delivered it. April 16, 2016, 1300 hours. I opened the ceremony today, obviously blessed to have been chosen to deliver these messages. We wasted 264 years of education, training, earned A's, and do better next time, D's. Winning, losing, and closing their wounds and scabs and cuts on the body and cuts on the mind. We teachers, moms and dads and nurses, security guards and crossing guards, who stood right where I'm standing, protecting the best, smartest, strongest group of young men our Creator had ever made. And we allowed their DNA they left behind in this ground to now be savagely, violently desecrated 10,000 miles away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And again. And again. And 5 more times to get to 64. Every single one of their futures were canceled. Their pasts were annulled. There's not a flower here. Not an F and one. Ladies and gentlemen, we are to blame. Not the NVA, not the Viet Cong, not the military-industrial complex, and not the stinking politicians. You and me. You and me have today been forever judged guilty as charged by our Creator. Look at that person next to you. And before you make a judgment physically, that fat, big, poor, skinny, black, white, weak, strong, monster, bald, or saint, think one thought before all of that nonsense. I wonder what I can do to help this person today that our common Creator placed here next to me. If you have any courage at all, let it begin right here, 7th and Lehigh, with you and me. Now, and let us thank our beloved 64 for admonishing us through their sacrifices to open up our eyes and see. This parcel of land is hallowed ground and is the U.S. ground zero of the Vietnam War. I was inspired to write a song. It took me 46 years. I wrote it in 5 minutes. One night, I punched and kicked my wife in bed, inadvertently, thrashing around from some things 50 years ago on a famous mountain of mine, infamous maybe, Hill 549, Firebase Fuller. And she said, "You Vietnam veterans, you didn't come home. You, Bob, should have stayed there because that's where your mind is. The only thing came home to me was your body. And many of your friends have not come home yet either." Usually I get angry when she says that stuff. I went downstairs and wrote this song. And it goes something like this. And it's the song that's played at the memorial for the 64 students from Edison High School who gave all. And if you could give more than all, they gave it all. And their families are still giving it. And their high school is still giving it and grieving it. And it goes something like this. Faded photographs, covered now with lines and creases, pictures torn in half, memories of bombs and faces, traces of war long ago that didn't turn out right, traces of war that I'm still fighting tonight. Homeward bound, I wish I was homeward bound, home where my mother's praying, home where there's teardrops flowing, home where my young wife's waiting silently for me, silently for me. William, Leo, and now some say you're not home yet. Come home, come home, come home. Come home, my Vietnam vets. To the fly boys, the ground boys, the Artie boys, the boys on the deep blue sea. To the Dollies and the Mollies and the Marys who have served so faithfully. Come home, come home, come home. Come home, my Vietnam vets. Come home, come home, come home. We want to hug you. We thank you. We love you. We salute you.